Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being your show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I like that this is kind of very an Allegra-centric episode, where obviously she's still, in the grand scheme of things, I also think it's interesting, she still hasn't told the team what happened to Iris. It's kind of like, well, that's kind of getting to the ins and outs of a lot of stuff, and I would assume that, jumping ahead a little bit, they probably don't know that Iris knows about that. Well, a lot about Allegra's past and her circumstances. So there's probably that element to it too, but it's like, right, you probably don't want to freak them out, be like, you kind of don't know where Iris is. There's just like, rather than worrying people, and you kind of don't need to know all Team Flash related stuff, so I'm not going to tell you that Iris kind of went poof, and we kind of have no idea where she is, or how to get her back, or what's up with these, so... But regardless, she's kind of running things, and it seems like she's pretty on top of everything. And then immediately it's like, oh, Taylor's kind of the issue. It's like, yeah, this has been an overarching thing that this issue is still there. And so it's like, cool, I want to investigate this light meta. It's like, no, we shouldn't do that. Like we're quickly saying like, oh, I wonder was that on purpose? I never knew she was doing that, because like her and Cecile were never wearing masks or anything. But I guess anytime Allegra's around, maybe she just naturally puts like a light filter on her, and I guess she just naturally does that, or maybe just because of her powers, it automatically, like, I don't know. Or maybe it's just happenstance. I don't know. Because I was about to say, like, sometimes Cecile and her are just out and about. They're not in, like, suits or masks. So I'm like, but I guess it's like they're very careful about, like, not being anywhere where that could be an issue. So I guess, like, as long as not too many people around publicly, I guess they're fine with that. Because at least Barry in the past, at least when it came to being around people he cared about, he would blur his face a little bit just so you wouldn't be able to, like, make out his face at any point and all. Especially for those who knew him. And obviously, Eobard did that as well. But nevertheless, in this episode, Allegra ends up having to confront her past when she's helping Lydia, well, also confront her past. Because it turns out the Uranus is the gang that they both used to roll with, which I had to look into it, because I assume, like, that it's been such a long time since Allegra's been a part of the show, so I never knew that the tattoo on her neck, the yin-yang, was part of, like, that gang. I thought that was just a tattoo that the actress who plays Allegra has. And maybe she does, and they just made a story kind of around it. I don't know which one. It's like, oh, no, that was just supposed to be always there because it's like a permanent tattoo from the fact that she was part of the Uranus. Like, if she wasn't... I feel like if it... That's why I feel like it probably has to be something that the actress has. Because I feel like I never noticed it until, like, more recently. So, like, maybe it hasn't always been there. Maybe she only recently... I don't know. I just assumed, like, oh, that must be, like, a tattoo the actress who plays her has. But apparently not. It's a Uranus thing, because... And I almost wondered if there was, like, some significance to it, because Dr. Light... Maybe it was just a stylistic thing to show it off, but Dr. Light and Sunshine's tattoos glowed, so that's what I was thinking, like, oh, is there something special? But it never came up in the episode, so it might have just been a stylized thing of like, oh yeah, take notice of these tattoos. So, it is interesting, because we haven't seen Dr. Light and Sunshine since the whole black hole situation, I think. I don't think they were in season 7 at all, were they? I think the last time we saw them might have been season 6, like their last appearances, I think. I could be mistaken. But Lydia is getting dragged back in and she wants nothing to do with it, and she's thinking of leaving town. But Allegra's like, right, if we can expose them, they can't come after you, we need to pull them out into the light. Because the Uranus, like, they used to steal stuff, they never used to murder people, but now they do, because the gang's changed a lot now that Dr. Light and Sunshine are running it. Because I noticed him at first, I was like, especially the actress who plays Sunshine, I was like, why do you look so familiar? I almost didn't recognize the actress. I didn't even recognize Dr. Light, just because, like, every time we've ever seen her, she's always been in a full suit, so her only having, like, those shades on didn't really click to me. But I was like, oh, Sunshine, she looks so familiar. Who is she? And I'm glad they were like, oh, Dr. Light and Sunshine. I was like, oh, thank God, because I probably wouldn't have remembered that off the top of my head. Allegra wants to run Lydia's story, but she also wants to hide her identity, so Aranis doesn't know, but Aranis kept an eye on Lydia, and she ended up going, it's like she went to Esperanza's cousin, so we need to take care of anyone that might threaten Aranis. So she tries to go back to the citizens, like, everyone, let's work on this story, but they're kind of like, should we really do that? Like, you're asking us to, we have no corroboration for this witness's story, like, how do we know it's true? It's like, well, Allegra didn't come forward about, like, right, well, I know because I used to be a part of this, I know about Ultraviolet being dead and all that because that's my cousin, so I know a little bit of the inner workings of this gang, plus I've worked with Team Flash and going up against Sunshine and Dr. Light before, and I trust Lydia because, once again, we were part of the same gang, but she doesn't let them know, which I can understand on some level, because but I guess it's like, right, when you're asking people to investigate this story, it's all about the truth, I think, journalism-wise, so it's like, right, you need to kind of be honest in why this case is so important to you, but for her, she always felt like if she told people the truth about her circumstances, all they would see is her past. They wouldn't see her for who she is. And she probably would never say this, but also Taylor definitely wouldn't have listened to you. She's like, oh, you're a criminal, blah, blah, blah. Like, that would have, I mean, what ended up happening later on probably would have happened sooner, even if she had told them the truth. But it's like, right, she's like, I'm not Iris, so there's already been a little bit of a disconnect. You guys were reluctant to listen to me. The other two were, but Taylor had the biggest resistance when it came to Allegra. Because they also don't think about I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, but, like, I'm curious whether they realized, like, once again, like, did Iris know about your past, or was she just as much in the dark, because a lot of that was sealed juvie records and stuff, so, or did, because also the thing is, Iris knows about my past and she hired me, but obviously Iris isn't here to corroborate that, so it's like, how do we know you're telling the truth, because you've been lying to us the entire time, especially now that you put us in a situation where the bad guys are trying to kill us. And at first I was almost like, why isn't Allegra? I was like, right, you are trying to keep your identity secret. So it is that complicated thing where it's like, God, I can't do my superhero thing while someone's around because I'll end up exposing my secret, and she doesn't want to. And I think this episode really kind of gave me an interesting insight to, like, Allegra in the regard of, like, right, you've never actually told anyone outside of Team Flash, like, like, anyone involved with Team Flash, you haven't told anyone outside of that about your powers and who you are. Because that's the thing, like, it's an automatic thing of, like, right, like, everyone as part of Team Flash know about her past, they know about her powers and everything, so, like, we're entering that territory where it's like, she's never told anyone outside of that yet, because she's trying to keep a lot of that to herself. She's not ready to step out into the superhero world, especially because she doesn't really have a mask yet, so she's trying to keep her identity as Allegra, so, but, the moment Sunshine and Dr. Light are threatening to kill everyone unless they hand over Lydia, which Lydia was going to do that. It's like, right, there's already been enough death. I want to stop these guys, but I'm not going to let other people die. So if I have to die in the process, that's fine. They never leaned into it. They bring it, I think it comes up once, but I think eventually, I think it comes up conversation once. I get why they didn't want to lean into it. They want it to be the altruistic thing of journalists protect their sources. So, first and foremost, we can't let our source die. Taylor's kind of like, no, we're all going to die if we don't, like, hand her over. She wants to get handed over, that's fine. But also at the same time, it's like, well, to be fair, it's like, even if you hand her over, there's no guarantee they'll let you live. Because for one, you've seen their faces, they're part of Aranis, so it's like, there's no hiding that. So they would have killed you because it's like someone, like, it's like, this person kidnapped me and is doing all this stuff, and they're not hiding their face. So it means they're most likely going to kill you because, you might not know their real names or whatever. You might just know their, like, villain names as Dr. Light and Sunshine, but it's still a thing of they wouldn't want to be exposed, so they'll kill Lydia out of principle and necessity, but also kill the rest of you too. Once again, they never leaned into that argument, but that's a valid argument, but once again, they wanted to make an altruistic choice of, we're not just doing this to save, we're doing this to save our source and our, rather than just trying to, rather than just saving ourselves being a part of the equation. So, but it's like, they would have killed them given the opportunity. So handing Lydia over was never an option, but it's just more so for Allegra. It was like, that was the most important thing. So, but then Taylor being like, how can we trust you? And she's like, I looked into your sealed records, which I'm like, I mean, no one's going to chastise her for that because it's like, you can't legally do that. That was actually super effed up for you to do that. And now we also get the context of, okay, the conversation that Barry saw between Allegra and Taylor while he was in the Still Force was that last episode? Might have been last episode or the episode before last. I don't remember now. No, that was definitely the episode before last, yeah. Because last episode was the one about him getting old and then also the whole Kayla thing. But regardless, either way, it's still just kind of like... Because I figured that was going to be about her, like... That Taylor was going to expose her, like, oh, I know you're this metahuman. I thought that's what the entire conversation was about. It's like, no, because at the time Taylor didn't know about her being the light meta. It was just like, oh, no, you're a part of the Uranus. But it's like, yeah, it's like, it's her past. It's like, she should be the one that comes forward when she wants to. I was almost hoping that the other two would kind of chastise Taylor. It's like, it will backfire to be like, okay, I kind of sucks you hid that from us, Allegra, but Taylor, you went too far. I was almost hoping they'd go down that route, but it's like, no, you kind of lied to us. You put our lives in danger. You should have kind of told us, been alone. I'm also like, but yeah, it's her history, her past. She shouldn't, like, that's always the thing too. Like, it's hard thing carrying your past with you. You know, I mean, that was the whole reason why Allegra wrote the whole article about Lydia, wanted the article written about Lydia in the first place, you know? So... But, so they weren't ready to trust her, and Allegra's just like, right, no one's going to listen to me now because of all of this. She's like, I'm no leader. They have every right, because Chester did say, like, oh, was it the right decision not to tell them about your connection to all of this? But she's like, I'm not a good leader. She even talks about how she and Esperanza got busted the first time was because Esperanza gave her leadership of something, and she missed the driver, and it was like, oh, cool. The job I ended up, it was just a shit show from the beginning, because it turns out the truck they were trying to rob was a lawn chair or something like that truck. And she's like, all that, and I almost got someone from the gang killed. Like, someone almost got like a shotgun blast, actually got hit because of me. They could have died because of me. I'm not a leader. But at the end of the day, for Lydia, it's like, right, because she had talked about it a little bit more about how, she had talked about it earlier, how her paths, she was trying to think, her life before Uranus wasn't great, but obviously she never thought things could get worse upon joining that gang. It's just like, she really didn't have any support system. She was kind of on her own. She was at a low. And she talks about how Esperanza Allegra, that Allegra inspired her, because it's like, right, by writing that article, you gave me a second chance at life. Like, if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Like, you helped me with that, so you've done such good for me. And you chuck adding, it's like, right, your past is what helped forge you into who you are right now. Yeah, you may have made mistakes in the past, but those mistakes have helped you grow into the person you are, the capable person you are. But the thing is, you have to choose. Like, you can't just keep hiding in the dark. So she tells the others and reveals who she is. She's like, I'm the light meta. It's like, wait, you're the one that's helping the Flash all the time. So it adds credibility. Like, oh, you're a hero. You're saving people all the time. It's like, wow, we had a hero amongst us and we didn't know that. So their plan is, while she's distracting Dr. Light and Sunshine, the others are interviewing Lydia and getting her story out there live. So now that Uranus can't hide in the dark anymore, because their identities are out there, and if anything happens to Lydia or anyone at the Citizen, you're busted. But Allegra holding her own. Has she ever done that? Like, maybe she did, and she just hasn't done it in a while. I was like, I didn't know she kind of went. I know this might rub some people the wrong way. How, like, she kind of did an Iron Fist thing there, where like her fists were going. I was like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Maybe she has done it in the past, and I just didn't remember. Well, because I don't think it's too often she gets in like close quarters combat with people. Well, because it's been a while since like an Allegra-centric episode where she where she is at the end, when she's like, her entire body's going very Captain Marvel-esque. That because the last time she's done that, it's been a while. But I think like she kind of has to get supercharged for that purpose. But even then, she was handling things on her own. And when she got shot by Dr. Light, I was almost like, oh, was that intentional or something? Is this a fake you? Did you create like an illusion or something? It's like, no, it was really her, but she drew upon the wound, and ended up absorbing all of that light and it supercharged herself. But obviously it's not something she's flexed and worked on a bit, so it ended up being too much power for her to handle. So, but it was just long enough to get things done, so. But they're always like, right, we can come after you. This isn't over. It's like, oh, we'll see about that. So now the CCPD is aware of them. Their names are out there. Bolos are out there for them, so they can't hide anymore. They've been drawn out into the light, so. But when it's all said and done, she's like, right, I know you guys, if you guys want to expose me and stuff, they're like, no, we're going to keep your secret as long as you want us to. And the other two are ready to get back to work. Even Taylor's like, you're not going to fire me? It's like, no, you're a great investigative journalist, and your instincts are right. But she does ask Allegra, like, you can't keep this in the dark forever, because she said, that photo I got of you in the Flash, I didn't even have to work hard to get that. It was like, she was just like, yeah, someone took that picture, and I ended up finding it pretty easily, so you're not going to be able to keep it in the dark forever. So she is going to probably have to start adopting a superhero persona, because as long as she's been a part of Team Flash, she's just done stuff as Allegra. So she'll probably get suited up, mask and everything. I'm legitimately curious how they're going to handle that going forward. For the first time, I did a little Googling of Allegra from the comics. Obviously, like, I don't think she's in the comics much, but her circumstances are different. What I thought was interesting, really quick Googling, it's like, oh, her grandmother's name is Esperanza. So I think that's kind of interesting. So it's like, right, they gave her a villain cousin named Esperanza, because I don't know if Ultraviolet's from the comics or not. I didn't Google that far, but her father in the comics has a name called Wavelength, so I'm like, is that what they're going to use for her superhero name? It's like they're going to be an homage to the character from the comics because once again, the quick Googling, I don't think she had, like, because I think she's more so a villain in the comics. I don't think she's specifically tied to the Flash either. From what I was reading, it was kind of like she's tied to, like, almost Batman-related stuff, like Batman and, like, the Teen Titans, because I think she got locked up in Arkham from the little bit I was reading, so that's why I'm like, okay, so she's more a bad guy in the comics than she is. Obviously, they made her more of a hero in the show, but, like, her father has the nickname Wavelength, so I'm like, oh, and considering her powers and everything, I'm like, oh, that might be where they end up going with that. They haven't really dived into that, but I'm assuming that's going to probably, like, people who are more well versed in the comics are like, oh, they're most likely that's probably, they haven't really said anything. They set it up like last episode, but it's probably like, oh, Wavelength is probably a good go-to one, but we'll see. But, yeah, I'm curious to see what potentially her super outfit will look like. Will she wear a mask? Will she use the light to hide her identity? Like, how she'll handle that, you know, going forward. But, she's also kept, I brought it up earlier, but she managed to keep Iris's connection to the Team Flash kind of secret, along with Chuck. Just being like, oh, yeah, like, he's just, there was a Dr. Light attacked the office previously, so Chuck, like, ended up, you know, modifying this place, so he's a more than just a tech guy. And it's like, I mean, we don't. Well, the argument could be like, oh, they're probably thinking like, oh, maybe he didn't know about Allegra's thing, or maybe he did, and maybe he's I don't know if they make the leap necessarily that he's connected to Team Flash or not. Whatever the case may be, just where my mindset is on the whole thing. But regardless, so there's that. Obviously, Lydia isn't running. Obviously, because during the expose, she ended up showing her face and letting people know who she was, because she didn't want to hide in the dark, to drag them out in the light. She wanted to give anyone else in her circumstances, those who are being controlled and forced to work with Uranus, she wanted to give them a face and a voice to be like, no, like, I escaped them, so can you. They shouldn't be able to hide in the shadows anymore. So she's helping out with giving the CCPD whatever information that they need at the time. So there's that angle to it. And another kind of smaller part to the episode is Barry finds out that there's a new speedster in town who was responsible for starting a fire at Ivo Labs. But when he arrives, it's like, oh, you saved us. It's like, wait, what? No, I didn't. It's like, so what are they talking about? So it's like, oh, there's a new speedster in town. But it's like, right, it's not Godspeed, and it's not Eobard, so who was it? So Barry gets information from the one person he can, and that's Eobard, who's on Lian Yu, which I was like, did we know that he was on Leon? At first I was almost like, did we know they have a... I was like, right. We've known for a while that they've had a prison there for very special criminals, because that's where Deathstroke was. God, when did he pop up again? Was it season 3 or was it season 4? He popped up again and it was on Lian Yu. I was like, right. I was about to say, like, wait, didn't Lian Yu get charred because the whole island blew up? But it was like, because that was at the end of season 5. And if I remember correctly, they come back to Lian Yu during the final season of Arrow, don't they? I think so. If I remember correctly, so I think Lian Yu was not as enough time had passed that I think the island had recovered to some extent. But now it's like, right, Argus is using it once again as its prison, and Eobard, who knows if anyone else is there, because we know Deathstroke's not there anymore, but I don't know if Eobard's the only one there. It might be just his special hold. But obviously for him, it's just, once again, like, not having his speed. It's just like, right, 5 seconds I could go around the world. Now it takes me that long to get across this stupid cell. It's like, you did this to me. It's like, no, Eobard, you did it to yourself. And Barry's trying to ask him, very Hannibal Lecter-esque about this new speedster. And it's like, right, you've tapped into the negative force, so you would know. He's like, no, I lost my connection, and my connection severed because of you. It's like, yeah, but all the time you've been time traveling across the place, did you ever sense another speedster in 2022? And he's just kind of like ignoring Barry. He's like, why would I help you? And Barry's like, you're jealous. He's like, no, I'm not jealous of you. He's like, no, not jealous of me, this speedster. Just when your story ends, theirs begins. And such a shame. I'm like, I understand. He's like, don't compare me to this speedster saying they're replacing me. No one could ever replace me, because no one is filled with as much hate for you as I am. I am driven. I am consumed by my hate for you, and no one could ever replace me. I was like, wow. And so Barry's kind of getting the answer he's want, but later looks from Eobard makes you go, did he give you that performance to make you think you were in control? It's like, right, speed or no speed, Eobard is still Eobard, and there's no getting around that megalomaniac. The fact is that you can't trust that anything is just, you think you're in control, but that's not a guarantee. And like almost smirky has at the end there, like, speed or no speed. He still says that he's calculating and working on a plan to still find a way to get out and kill Barry, so I'm wondering whether this situation is what it is. Because he went into the whole diatribe about, like, right, I spent all that time getting close to you just so I could rip you apart. Rip and destroy everything around you and make you suffer. But he makes Barry realize, it's like, right, this speedster doing what they're doing reminds me of you 8 years ago. And Barry's like, right, they're not trying to do this on purpose. They're a speedster that doesn't have control of their powers. So Barry leaves, but like I said, Eobard's got that smug look on his face. So that's why I'm almost like, especially because the last line of the episode is, you won't regret this. I'm like, you will, won't you? She's secretly working for Eobard. Like, are they like some speedster group that, like, people obsessed with speed, that, like, did Eobard set things in motions? That, does he have acolytes or something like that who worship him almost like a god or something? That's what I was curious about, but that's what immediately came through my mind. But Barry finds the new speedster, and she's putting back the batteries she stole, and she's trying to run away from Barry, but it's like, yeah, you can't outrun me. She's like, I'm moving at the speed of light, but he's like, yo, yeah, I'm faster. It's like, also, it's like, wait, I'm the Flash. I guess it's like no one's had an opportunity to really, like, test his speed, so she's like, oh, I'm moving at the speed of light. There's no, like, we'd be even pace, but it's like, no, you're even faster than me. It's like, yeah, I've been faster than you in particular for a while. Fact is, she's already throwing lightning is pretty impressive. Because I'm almost trying to remember what that drug was that can, was it velocity? Yeah, that could make you a speedster. I was almost wondering if there's some correlation there, but she artificially made, her and her colleagues made her a speedster, and maybe they're trying to make themselves speedsters, so we have a little ring, like I said, maybe a group of acolytes who are all speedsters, but Barry trying to talk to her about what she's doing. She's like, right, it was an accident, she didn't mean to do that. In fact, she's actually stealing the battery that she made, because she's a doctor, what's her name, I think her name's Mina, she's the one who made the battery. It's also the one of the actors. She's from 4400, which obviously was sadly canceled after one season. I'm already blanking on her character's name, but she was like the tech person that like had the 4400s back. Specifically, I'm referencing the reboot. So I was like surprised to see her. I was wondering who was going to be under the mask. I was like, oh, when it was her, I was like, oh, that's dope. But I'm also like a little like hesitant. I'm like, I don't trust you. I think you're playing Barry. Because the last person he had under his wing, necessarily, well, there's Nora. He, might be the last person he trained. I'm trying to think. I don't know if he's necessarily trained with Allegra, has he? Or maybe Allegra and Frost? Maybe? I don't know. I don't know if Nora, the original timeline, the previous timelines, Nora, from Season 5, I don't know, well, Season 4 and 5, I don't know if that was the last person he necessarily trained, I don't remember. Either way, I'm not sure I'm just hesitant when it comes to all of that. So we'll see where that kind of goes from there. Because even Barry's like, oh yeah, like I had a mentor, and it's like, it's kind of sad that, well, you've had a few mentors, but it's like, sadly, your main OG mentor will always be the sociopath that killed your mom. That's always going to be kind of a sad element. But, right, despite all that, you became the hero that you have, and you know, you've helped mentor and inspire other people. Well, because he was talking about Eobard specifically, because I know Oliver kind of played a brother/mentor role at one point in time, but I'm assuming he was more so specifically referencing Eobard, but regardless. Another element to the end of the episode is Caitlin saying that she's got to take a step back. You know, she's actually going to spend time with her mom, trying to figure herself out because she can't return to Star Labs and Team Flash until she figures things out, which Danielle Pennebaker directed this episode, so that was another reason why she wasn't in it much. Interesting timing because obviously she directed other episodes as well. I'm not sure how many off the top of my head, but I know she directed, at least, I feel like there's been maybe a few, but, you know. The reason why I'm also saying, like, the timing is interesting because the episode of Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, which I reference a lot, Katie Lotz was the most recent guest, I think. I think that just came out this week. She, because I think that was filmed a little bit before, like, it was official that Legends will cancel, because she was saying, like, right, a lot of stuff had already gotten read up, but Legends was still in that in-between space, so I think that was, like, recorded before it was officially announced that it got canceled. But regardless, she was talking about the fact is because obviously she's directed an episode of The Flash, but she's directed, I think she said, at 3 episodes of Legends. So just interesting conversation. And she had a whole conversation about how, right, not liking being on camera in an episode that she directed. And I'm trying to think, for Danielle Pennebaker, like, has she been on camera for episodes that she's directed? I mean, I know that's probably, like, that's still a lot. You be juggling too many hats like that, right? So, I just thought that was interesting. That's probably why she, like, limited how much she was in the episode in that regard. Or maybe just naturally the episode was written that way to be, maybe it's a collaborative effort of, like, limiting how much she's in the actual episode. That's why I'm almost like, well, Barry's saying that she's going to be okay, because she just needs time. She loves everyone. She was hurt by what Barry did, but she also understood. And because at the end of the day, Joe was even saying, like, right, what he did wasn't necessarily wrong, but more so, like, he just hopes that at the end of the day, that's not what Caitlin ends up losing, that she keeps hold of hope itself, you know? So the fact is, I'm curious, like, the fact is she really just going to walk away from this? Because she wasn't the only one. Barry's aware of her, but Mark was helping her too, so either Mark's going to be like, bump that, and he's going to work on this by himself, or Caitlin's lying. I don't know. Like, maybe while she's away, Mark reaches out to her. It's like, no, you got me on this. You wanted to bring her back. We can do this. Because we haven't caught up with what Mark, because ever since Mark decided to help her, that was the last time we've seen him, so we have no idea what he's up to and what that correlates to this whole plan, like whether, like I said, whether he's off doing it on his own because Caitlin bowed out, or he's going to come, like, this is all a ploy and they're still secretly doing it, or he's going to go back and convince her to come back into the fold, and Team Flash is going to have to stop her again before things, well, I don't know, we'll see. Things have kind of been settled on that, not settled, but stopped from going further. I even thought it was kind of interesting, and I guess, you know, Eobard knows about Frost. That's why I'm surprised, because he didn't say anything about Iris, so whatever her circumstances are, he has to know about Frost because he's like, oh, because I've been all over time, so I knew she was going to die. But he doesn't know about Iris, because if he wanted to really dig into Barry, he would have referenced Iris, so he must have some connection to that. The fact is, he's not rubbing, because given the opportunity, Eobard would rub that in his face more so than anything, not just the Frost thing, but Iris, because he knew that would cut him even deeper. So he has to have some connection there. Maybe the people I'm claiming, like what's her name, Mina, the scientist, like maybe she has some connection to that, because we're still like up in the air about her time sickness, where it came from. It might still all be a byproduct of Eobard in some shape or form. So that's just where that's what I'm throwing out there. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where things kind of go from here. I think it said there's 3 episodes left in this season, so I'm curious to see where this all ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.